Now, it is obviously a very tense week, not just for students, but teachers and parents alike, really, I guess, because A-level results are announced, aren't they?
They are. It's a funny old thing because, on one hand, it is very important, it's very significant, it's the end of your school career, and so much seems to depend on what your results are going to be. But there's another side to that, which is whatever your results are, there will always be something else you can do, and how you respond to the results, whatever they are, is key to it. So UCM, just like all the secondary schools, come results day on Thursday, will be there to have those conversations. So whether the results go better than expected or not as good as expected, most young people are needing a good conversation, a good impartial conversation about their options if it hasn't gone the way that they planned. For some students, they've made a plan, they've applied to university, they get the grades, and it's fine. Everything just goes as they expect. But most people need to just stop and consider, what are my options? I've got these results. Is this really what I want to do now? Are there other things I can think about? And that's what the conversations that are available at UCM on Thursday, as they will be at the secondary schools.
And do you think students are told that sort of strongly enough in advance, that there are actually other things they can do if they don't get those grades? And do they actually prepare for that?
I don't know. I think certainly my colleagues and myself, and I'm sure my colleagues in secondary schools would, share that kind of approach. I think it's quite hard when you're in the midst of it yourself, though, to hear it. You're just focused on, I've done all this work, I did my exams, and Thursday the 16th of August is coming up, and everything depends on it. I mean, I was saying to Ben earlier, when I remember I had a migraine for 2 days waiting for mine, hundreds of years ago when I was at school. And no matter what people said to me, it does seem to be really important. But we just need to keep chipping away and be there and have be ready to talk to people. Yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it, Gail? There's a lot of pressure, or certainly there was, 20 plus years ago now when I got my A-level results. A lot of pressure that they were kind of the be-all and end-all, and I'm not afraid to say I did terribly, absolutely dreadfully in my A-levels. GCSEs I did all right, but by the time I sort of went up to sixth form, the cupboard was a bit bare in terms of sort of commitment and study and that kind of thing. So I didn't do very well at all. There are other options, that's the thing, and this is one of the sort of key messages, that actually it is not the end of the world. Hugely important, but always lots of other options. Yeah,
it's quite a sort of Taoist thing, isn't it? That kind of almost contradiction in that statement. There is, and I think about higher education, which is the broad term for doing degrees and anything beyond A-levels. It could be a degree, it could be a higher national diploma or certificate. Anything beyond your A-levels, you don't even have to go into it straight after school. A lot of people take a break now, whether it's a formal gap year or whether it's just going to work and sort of settling themselves and then thinking, well, I'm now ready to commit to study. You could consider part-time study, part-time work. There's lots of ways to mix the cake, I guess, of higher education, which is often what you forget when you get hit with your A-level results and you think there's only one way. Certainly in the past that wasn't the case. We are really lucky now that UCM has got so many on-island options. Now, obviously, we're only a relatively small higher education institution, and so not everyone's course of study is going to be available there. But for those people who are interested in the courses that we run, it's a genuine option. And even something as simple as you might want to undertake your first year with us and then transfer your second and third year to our partner university at Chester, or the other way around. So there's lots of things to think about, in terms of how you go about undertaking your higher education.
I think a lot of people wouldn't know there are all those different kinds of options, like you say, that you can split it between here and across the water, which sort of ticks all the boxes, I guess.
Absolutely. And another sort of comment people make, and I'm absolutely passionate about this as a Manx person myself, that people are concerned that staying on island to study means you're stuck on island studying. Well, you're not. I mean, we've got 2 students as we speak who are doing a 3-month internship in a rather gorgeous resort on the Garden Route in South Africa. So they're committing themselves to their studies, to getting their good grades whilst they're here, and what we can do is facilitate international experiences as part of their studies. So staying on Ireland doesn't mean stuck on Ireland. In fact, quite the opposite. We feel very strongly about that. So, again, don't want to be blowing the trumpet of UCM at all. This is about young people at the moment. This week, post-Thursday and getting their results, we want to support them to make confident, strong decisions that they're proud of and that they're happy with. But we do need to let them know there's a lot more opportunity on the island perhaps they realised.
And you mentioned the partnership with Chester there. How does that actually work? What does it mean for the university and for the students?
Okay, so the University College Isle of Man does not have what's called degree awarding powers itself. So when people complete a degree at UCM, they don't get a UCM degree. So we have a partner. and that's the University of Chester. So actually students studying with us, we've been authorised by Chester to deliver the degrees, we do the delivery, we do the assessment, we organise everything. But the actual degree is a University of Chester degree, so that's what it means to be their partner. And hence the opportunities of what we call 1+2 or 2+1, where you split the years up, is something we can offer because we have that partnership. It also means that our students are able to avail themselves of international opportunities through the University of Chester as well. So in some ways they get the best of both worlds in that they've got a very local support system. All the lecturers are here, all the facilities, resources are here, but they have got access to a very large and successful UK university as well. So it's actually quite a unique and quite advantageous position they're in.
And I guess as well, you mentioned sort of access to things over here. Presumably also from a financial viewpoint, that's something we discuss a lot with the idea of going to university. It potentially makes it a little bit cheaper for them too.
Yeah, it's a complicated area, this. Where I'll start with that is that the Isle of Man government remains perhaps the most generous jurisdiction in the world, and I have I know a bit about this in terms of supporting people to study at university. However, inevitably, if you're away, it's going to cost you more. Living expenses, travelling to and fro, etc., etc. And in addition, there is one factor that was introduced 3 or 4 years ago, which is if you're studying towards a degree in the UK, most students will need to make a £2,500 contribution to the tuition fees. So that's nothing to do with the expense of being away and etc. That's just the tuition fees. If you study at UCM, you're not required to make a £2,500 tuition fee contribution. So, I mean, it's not the time to go into the detail of the eligibility for these things. That's available through the Student Awards information, and quite rightly, it's not a UCM activity. But that's a key distinction to make. So there's an advantage from the tuition fee point of view to stay on Ireland, but to be honest, it's those on expenses that most of our students and their families tell us are a lot more expensive than they perhaps realised at first. But it's a choice, if that's what you want to do, but you just need to know what you're getting into, I guess, financially. Yeah.
I guess as well, though, the idea of sort of continuing your studies on Ireland, it is going to save you money at the end of the day because you've got the potential to stay at home, and
exactly.
not sort of fork out on accommodation expenses as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really attractive to think about going away and you're living in a hall of residence or whatever, but they're quite expensive now, halls of residence. When I was at university, we lived in like you hear these stories, don't you? Like a middle-aged woman talking here about 20 people in one house and making your own soup and cider in the airing cupboard and things. A lot of that doesn't go on now. The halls of residence at most universities are quite salubrious, to be honest, and so that costs money. Whereas if you stay here, you might stay at home, or you might not stay at home, but you're not going to have all those additional and on expenses that you'd have away.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those students who did a very similar thing to what you're talking about now, I have to say. But on that note, actually, it does raise that sort of question. I know you're not saying you must stay on the island. You're absolutely not saying that. But there is something to be said, isn't there, for those who do want to go off island and are able to have that experience? Because, as we often say on the show, we are in a very sort of unique position on the Isle of Man in that it's very sort of small community and we don't necessarily get the big picture of the wider world. So if you are able to sort of have some experience off island, there is a benefit to that as well.
I think so, and that's back to, for example, the internships that we've facilitated with some of our corporate partners, and also in the second year of all the degrees we offer, they do a 5-week work placement, which they can do anywhere in the world. A lot of people choose to do it here. But we've had people go to Lyon, we've had people in Barcelona, 5-week work placement in Barcelona in May. What's there not to like about that? So we do. So yes, we agree entirely, and that's why we work so hard to facilitate those off-island experiences as part of the on-island delivery.
And out there in the big wide world, how are UCM courses viewed by employers? For example, a first from UCM, how does that compare to one of the more sort of, I suppose, widely known institutions across the water? Well,
as I say, the UCM, it's not a UCM degree. We deliver it, we assess it. It's entirely sort of belongs to the UCM from that perspective, but the degree is actually awarded by the University of Chester. So immediately that puts you into the ranking, the UK rankings. The other thing, and this is something we're really proud of, is that certainly for the last 3 years we've exceeded the UK average for the number of top grades. So in a degree classifications, you get first class honours, and then you can get upper second class honours, and then there's a few more below that. Those 2 classifications are called top grades. we have for the last 3 years maintained 83% of our students getting a top grade, which is much higher than the UK. Now, in part that I think is because our classes are smaller. Students probably get a lot more attention, whether they like it or not. They probably get a lot more attention from lecturers here at UCM, but just because we're smaller, it's the Isle of Man. It's part of the way we work. So in terms of viewing yes, it's a University of Chester degree, but because it's delivered by UCM, the chances of a really good grade are much higher. And the other thing is that most of our students, by the time they graduate, have had that much interaction with local employers that they've virtually built their reputation. They've got a living CV on Ireland. And so our employment rate into relevant positions, so if you've done an accounting degree, you get an accountancy job, etc., is in the high 90%. And that's because they've had a chance. Whereas, now that's a bit tricky for those folks who do go off Ireland and then they want to start their career back here. They've got to kind of invent themselves, I guess, to the local employers. That is a real advantage for UCM students because they've built their reputation, done their networking for the entire 3 years of their degree. So we really appreciate the support that local businesses, government departments, employers on the island give our students because they contribute a lot to the quality of the courses.
Which is something we've been trying to encourage, really, isn't it? It's having young people either stay here or return here to sort of start the new generation on the island. And again, you use the word return there. We do also have a postgraduate qualifications here as well. So we have a Masters in Business Entrepreneurship, which is a very unique, it's a full-time master's course, but the students do 2 20-week consultancy placements with a local business. Incredible opportunity to develop your skills and your professional capacity and contribute genuinely to a local business. So, we've given a lot of thought to how we design and deliver our higher education on Ireland because we want it to make a difference to the island and to the students at the same time. So with regards to those courses then, you've just mentioned a business postgrad, for instance. Are most of them, I think there's that perception that most of the courses at UCM are sort of vocational or skill-based. What are some of the things that are available? Yeah,
and that's probably true. You'd expect, UCM being on Ireland to have a number of business-based courses. It's the heartblood of the island. So we have a business management course, we have events management and marketing, and we have accountancy and finance. And quite rightly, they're popular courses, the students do well, and they stay on Ireland and they contribute and get themselves some good careers out of that. On the IT side, again, you'd expect us, and we do. We have applied computing, computer science and cybersecurity. Same story. Then we also have other areas, like we have a fantastic history and heritage degree. A lot of people think it's just about Manx history. It's not. It's a very broad history and heritage degree, and that's a really, really good course. We have foundation degree in health and studies, which you can go on to and do a full public health degree, a BSc, if you wanted to. We also quite recently have introduced sport to our offer, which the island loves its sport. So we're very pleased to be able to offer a foundation degree, which is the first 2 years of a degree in sports coaching, and then next year in exercise and health. And we have an art-based degree, which is visual communication through digital media, and that's another fabulous course that we've designed specifically for the island. And I'm just going to briefly look at my notes, because imagine if I'd forgotten to mention.
We'd like that arts one, wouldn't we? The visual side of it.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of listening to that thinking, that sounds great.
Well, I know there are some really good stuff, courses with regards to the media as well. There's film and media courses and as you said, visual arts, which are excellent, aren't they? And again, it's looking at what the modern world is like for students now.
Yeah, and we're continually working on adapting to that and changing, because I guess some people would argue that universities, traditional view of university it needs to catch up with the modern world. I mean, some of the stories you're having today about future careers that no universities sort of probably thought of in terms of being a vlogger or whatever. So yes, we're constantly working with our university partner to make our courses as relevant and as agile and as contemporary as we can. Just quickly, the other group of courses I didn't mention, which is probably the even more vocational, which are our higher national certificates and higher national diplomas. They're equivalent to the first and second year of a degree, respectively. And we do those in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, IT and business. They're very, very vocationally focused, so you spend a lot of time in the workplace, and they're fabulous for a lot of people. They really enjoy that work focus that they provide.
And obviously it's quite clear with what you're saying there with the vocational courses how important they would be to an employer, but with some of the ones that are sort of degrees that are maybe less vocational, are they becoming less important to employers?
I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's like most things in life, you can argue it from a number of directions, but certainly, in terms of the successful business people and politicians, an enormous amount of them have history degrees. History is yes, it's a particular subject, and you need to be interested in history and heritage, but as a discipline in terms of research, a discipline in terms of critical thinking and in building arguments, it's a really, really good degree. So it has those general transferable skills that are useful in lots of professions, and certainly a requirement in people who want to progress on into senior leadership positions. So it's an interesting discussion about the subject versus the skills that you learn, and how important the subject is versus the sort of skills you learn by studying it at such a high level. I think they're all worthwhile.
Yeah.
And that's the individual choice.
It's also about a wider education than it's not
Absolutely.
just about sort of learning what's in the books, is it? At the end of the day,
it is, and you'll get a lot of people worried that degrees have become too vocational. There's a counter argument that it's not all about getting a qualification to get a job. That actually
things are adapting all the time, aren't
Yeah.
they? That's the thing. Like you say, you've always got to sort of keep up with the modern world.
You have, and what the world needs now is people who are agile, resilient, creative, enterprising entrepreneurs, and those skills come out of studies from a variety of topics. So, your subject of your studies doesn't limit you to that just being what you know about. There's all those extra skills that you learn from studying at higher level. That's the case in all of our degrees.
Well, there's so much we're able to talk about with Gail. Gail Corrin's with us for the course of the hour. So if you do have any questions for her, you can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. But just let people know there is advice this week, and there are some times when you're able to see students, aren't there, if they have any sort of questions on getting their results.
Yeah, we've this Thursday. I think students get the results quite early, and as I say, most of the secondary schools have a staff there, and the students will often go to their secondary school for a conversation. But we're available both to students who've already applied to us for the degree, or people who have a desire to think about that, post their results. So we're open from 9 to 5. There'll be someone at the Homefield Road campus, but also down at the Nunnery campus we'll have staff, which is where a lot of our higher education programmes are delivered, on the phone or walk in. We don't mind.
And is it just for students or for parents too?
Anybody. Anyone who wants to talk about this topic, we'll talk with them.
Because, this is such a nerve-wracking time for parents too.
Yeah.
We talk about the students, but actually I wonder if it's worse in some cases for the parents. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They will be, some of them will be beside themselves now over these next few days, just wondering what those results will be.
Yeah. We started the show by talking about, whatever the results are, it's how you respond to them. There are many opportunities now. If the results are not what you think, there will be other opportunities. There really are silver linings in everything that happens to you in life. And part of our job is to help you find that. But mostly people will get the results they expect, but they'll still want to just check that what they want to do next, perhaps, is really what they want to do, because it's a long time since before Christmas when you made your applications. So you want to just check in and say, look, this is my plan. What do you think? What are the other options? We're available for those conversations as well.